This time of year, Daniel and I both get emails with trail camera pictures of bucks, people asking us to age for them. And we love helping people, but candidly, we just can't respond to everyone. We can't take the time to look at every picture and give them an accurate estimate of a buck's age. So I want to share some hints so y'all can do this at home. You'd probably be better at it than we are. Trail cameras are great tools to help in this process of estimating the age of bucks where you're going to be hunting. But there's a few tips we'd like to share to make that even more valuable data. One of the first tips I want to say is the best way to get an accurate estimate of a buck is look at a picture that's a broadside, head up in the normal position view. Not the head way up trying to rub a scrape and not way down like it's feeding. That change in posture changes the body's shape, and estimating a buck's age accurately on the hoof is all about the buck's shape. Now that we know the type of image we need to accurately estimate a buck's age, how do we set our trail cameras up to give us that? It's not just a willy-nilly process. You know, here in August, a lot of bucks are going to water, some of the water hoses are drying up or whatever. So putting over a water hose can be a good thing to get that posture we're looking for right when they're walking up to it, or even when bucks are drinking, they're often lift their head up and kind of look around. Be cautious on real steep banks. Those front feet could be way down, make their fanny way up in the air, and that will totally give a buck a different look. So we want to be cautious. We're on flat ground. We position our camera where hopefully we're going to get that perpendicular or side view where their head is up in a natural position. Food plot's another great location, especially this time of year, because bucks are still in bachelor groups throughout much of the whitetails range, and that allows us to have a comparison. It's really easy to look at an individual buck and make it older or look bigger than it really is. But when you've got 3 or 4 or 7 bucks together, it's really easy to say, well, that buck must be older than that buck. Look at the difference in shape. And using those comparisons is a great way to learn, especially the characteristics of deer on your property. And I want to add something here. The body shape characteristics we share, how far the neck comes down and how close it gets to the breast or to the brisket, how deep those shoulders are and how much of the chest is sagging below the shoulders. Those characteristics are true from key deer way up into Canada. You may go from a 300 or 400 pound deer to a 100-pound deer, but the body shape and characteristics remain relevant throughout the whitetails range. Year to year is also very important. Don't just look at antlers. And you know your property and where some bucks tend to hang out at certain times of year, especially in August. They're usually on a food cover pattern. And if you can get the pictures of what you assume is the same buck, maybe he's got a scar on his body from fighting, or the ear's been clipped off or something like that, and you can track that buck, that's an outstanding way to learn how to accurately estimate a buck's age on your property. And I'm always saying estimate because short of a fawn, there's some guesswork involved. Different deer get injured or something happens and they age differently. And I want to share it like this. If you were living in a third world country and you had really bad food supplies, you're under stress all the time, when you're 40, you're going to look like someone who's probably 90 that's living here in the good old USA and got plenty of food and, you know, good family, they're loved. So the stress of a deer can impact how old they look or how quickly they age, just like it does in humans. You've got your setup now. You know what you're looking for in your camera placement. What are we looking for on the deer? Well, there's some simple things. Let's just start with an outline. I'm always looking at that neck-brisket ratio. I'm looking at the chest, how far it sags down below the shoulder. I'm looking at the waist, which is right in front of the hips on a deer. And as that waist, does that line come across their flat? Those are some of the main things I'm looking for. And we'll share some more details of what I'm looking for on each of those characteristics. Notice I did not mention the antlers. Antlers are highly variable per each individual deer. They're a unique trait between that doe and that buck's pairing. And that can be widely spread throughout the herd on any property. Remember, research shows that 25% or more of twin fawns are usually stepbrother or stepsister. That doe bred with multiple bucks while she was receptive. So the whitetail gene pool is extremely diverse. You always hear, well, we got that trend on our property. We only have those old wide bucks or whatever it is. That's rarely the case because of the tremendous diversity in the whitetail gene pool. From managing deer, we could really just get away with fawns, yearlings, 2-year-old and older. 2-year-old bucks and even more mature bucks are kind of in the same age class from a strictly management point of view. But we know that as bucks age, they tend to get larger and larger antlers until they become senile or their body's breaking down. Let's talk about some of these characteristics. As a fawn, it's going to be a square shape. It obviously doesn't have antlers visible to say male or female, but it's going to be a square shape. What do I mean by that? If you measure from the point of the hip to the point of the shoulder, and from both those points to the ground, it's really square. As deer age, they tend to elongate and to become rectangular shaped. So you see first deer in the field, that's often a button buck. It looks like a great big doe because one deer's out there, but if it's square shaped, short neck, short nose, that's a 6-month-old deer. Probably need to give it a pass.
Growing Deer is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Also by Green Cover Food Plots, Winchester, PH Outdoors, Black Widow Bows, Moultrie Mobile, Steel, Fleet Outdoor Apparel, Morel Targets, Fourth Arrow, Soil Pro Outdoors, Scorpion Venom Archery, Case IH Tractors, Burris Optics, and Redneck Hunting Blinds.
1.5-year-old deer are kind of like sub-adults or teenagers, right? They look bigger, and by themselves they can look great big when you're looking at them. But when you look at them compared to another deer standing by, you'll notice their legs look really long. And that's because they're not any taller. Their chest and belly have not filled out. They've not settled down yet. And it makes those legs look long because there's nothing blocking the view. So when I see a 1.5-year-old deer, I'm looking at really long legs, a really tight waist. That belly will actually go up right before it gets to the hip, not a pot belly like I and mature bucks have. 2.5 and older, 2.5-year-old deer, they're pretty slick looking, and a 2.5-year-old buck to me looks like a mature doe. On a trail camera picture, if I cover up those antlers with my hand or a post-it note on a computer screen, it just looks like a really mature doe. It's not muscly. Those shoulders aren't developed. You're not seeing defined muscles. The neck still breaks pretty high above the brisket, even during the rut, certainly this time of year. And it really, really looks like a mature doe. That's a good test you can use that's really accurate. When I get to 3-year-old bucks, I'm looking like a muscled up racehorse. Those shoulders are developed, but there's still a waist. It goes in before the hips. You'll see it rise up. And that back is flat, just like a really high quality racehorse. That neck, it's certainly bigger, but even during the rut, it's not all the way down to the brisket. You can see a clear break of 4 or 5 inches between the brisket and where the neck merges with the chest. But when I get to a 4-year-old or older buck, that neck, especially during the rut, there's very little space, a finger or two between the bottom of the neck and the brisket. There's really not much chest showing. If you're looking at it, the legs look short. That's because that chest is filled out, the belly's filled out, and the front and back legs look short compared to a yearling deer in the same frame or the same picture. And that belly, well, it's kind of like me. It's filled out enough where it's not really tight right before it gets to the hips. And that mature buck will have a belly that sags some, and the back will sag, just like aging a horse. They look at the sag of the back. Or another way to look at that is it looks like there's a hump over the shoulders. That hump over the shoulders really means the back is sagging down. It didn't grow a bigger hump, just the rest of the body is sagging down. A little tip we talked about earlier, you will not see that hump if the buck's head is way too far up or way down, because that change in posture changed the shape of the body. It's critical to get an accurate estimate to get that broadside view and the buck's head in a normal upright position. 5 years old could be a really mature buck on low quality habitat and in the prime in much of Iowa. So you got to be careful where the location is when you're assigning an age to a buck. In prime habitat, that 5-year-old buck is still looking good. He's certainly got a belly on him, not much of a waist. That belly extends all the way to the rear legs, and the legs look short. He's really muscled up. Maybe you're in the mountains of, West Virginia or somewhere like that, and there's nothing but closed canopy forest all around. That 5-year-old buck is going to look really old. That hump is going to really show because that back is going to be sagging down a little bit, and he's not going to be quite as well developed because he hadn't had great food throughout his life. So you got to put this in context of the habitat type the deer is living before you assign the age. I'm going to end with senile bucks. Yeah, deer get senile if they live long enough, just like humans do. That body starts breaking down. Typically, the body will start breaking down while they still have a really good set of antlers. They produced a really good set. If you find a buck that the antlers are going downhill, that's probably, in good habitat, 8, 9, 10 years old. That's an old buck. I killed a buck several years ago in Kansas hunting with the black widow way back when. Man, it was fun. Stalked within 7 yards that buck, shot him on the ground. Great buck for me, 25.5-inch inside spread. Short tines, massive Coke can bases. I'm thinking, man, that deer should have been 170 inches. It's like 150 or something like that. Big old deer. I pulled a tooth, sent it to Matson's lab. They're probably the best in the world at doing semina manuali, where they cut the tooth in half and count growth rings, just like counting on a tree. That buck was 11.5 years old. He was going downhill, body wasn't functioning as good, and those antlers had probably shrunk down. In his prime, that probably was truly a booner. If you're really interested in aging deer, of course, pulling a jawbone off a harvested deer can be really accurate. There's some variability there too. And probably the best way, consensus of all the scientists I work with, is doing semina manuali, pulling an incisor tooth, one of the front bottom teeth out of a deer, saving it till season, and sending that to a really good semina manuali lab. I'm summarizing this just a little bit. If you're into estimating the age of deer on the hoof, practice makes you a whole lot better. I don't think anyone's perfect at it. Having deer together allows you to say, oh, look at the difference between this deer and this deer in the same habitat. Don't compare deer in West Virginia to deer in the middle of Iowa. There's too many differences there. Comparing deer from the same farm, when you're comparing deer, is the way to go when you're estimating a buck's age. August is a great time before season. Tracking deer year to year is really beneficial. Got a scar on there somewhere, you know for sure it's that same deer. And you're looking at the body shape when that deer is broadside, head up in a normal position. Whatever age class deer you like to hunt or is available to hunt where you are, it should be fun. And remember, I feel very strongly that as hunters, we are providers for our family, and that end product of the venison, well, that's the biggest trophy of all. We spend all this time studying deer, but the most important thing we can study is God's will for our life. When we do that by getting in His Word and applying it to our lives daily. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.